In this video, we will continue to explore business ownership and answer the question, what is franchising? We will look at the key differences between a franchise, a franchisee, and a franchisor. By the end of this video, we will have unravelled exactly what this important form of business ownership is and the impact on the entrepreneurs involved. So, imagine that you have set up an extremely successful sandwich shop in your local area. Business is booming, and customers keep telling you that their friends wish they lived near your sandwich shop because it's just so good. There is, however, only one of you, and you are not a superhero, so you cannot possibly be in two places at once. How can you quickly clone your business and have your sandwich shops popping up everywhere? If this is what you are hoping to achieve, then franchising is a possible option that you could consider. Examples of franchises are everywhere we look, and chances are that you pop into one at least a few times a week. Just some examples include McDonald's, Starbucks, Subway, and Papa John's. To all the teachers out there, show all of these videos without any ads and gain access to our growing library of over 500 teaching worksheets. Why not visit BizzWizard.co.uk to find out more? Now, before we go any further, let's meet one of this video's main examples. This is Jimmy Jones, who has recently opened a MegaBeans coffee shop in a busy shopping area in Coventry. Jimmy has purchased the rights to operate a MegaBeans branch from the franchisor, the original founder Brett Mant, who opened the original MegaBeans shop over 10 years ago. Let's think of the reasons why Brett may want to sell his successful business as a franchise. If you decide to sell your business as a franchise, just like Brett has, you are known as the franchisor. This is by definition the person who is actually selling the rights to operate under their brand to other entrepreneurs. As a franchisor, you will usually charge an initial setup fee to the franchisee. This is the person that's buying the rights to operate under your brand, and in our example, this is Jimmy. It's really important not to get these muddled up. The franchisor is the person selling the franchise, and the franchisee is the person buying the franchise. The initial fee charged will depend on the franchise that you are purchasing, but this initial fee can be into the tens of thousands of pounds or sometimes even higher. In our example, Brett has charged Jimmy an initial fee of £12,000 to open the new MegaBeans shop in Coventry. As a franchisor, you will also charge a percentage of all revenues made by the franchisees. Brett receives 10% of all income generated by each MegaBeans coffee shop in operation. If Jimmy sells £100,000 worth of goods in the first year, then Brett will receive 10% of this. This means that Brett will receive £10,000 from Jimmy just as royalties. So you can imagine that this can make a business like McDonald's huge amounts of income. If they receive a royalty on every single Happy Meal that is sold, then this is all going to add up pretty quickly. Bring this video and over 100 more to life with fun, interactive games, quizzes, and case studies. Why not try the first 25 completely free by visiting BizzWizard.co.uk. As a franchisor, like Brett, you maintain control of many different aspects of the business and how it is operated across the different stores. Firstly, you control the products that are sold. As the franchisor, you do all the advertising, so you remain in control of what is sold. In the example of McDonald's, if they release a new burger, it will usually be sold in all branches across the country. At MegaBeans coffee shop, Brett, the franchisor, can decide to launch a new flavour of latte, and this will then be sold in every single store, including Jimmy's in Coventry. As the franchisor, you also maintain control of how employees dress. This may include uniforms that are consistent across all venues. At a MegaBeans store, employees are expected to wear a black shirt and a red apron, and this is the same in stores across the country. Jimmy and any employees he hires in his store in Coventry will have to comply with this standardised dress code, or, well, they won't be able to work there. In any MegaBeans coffee shop you visit throughout the UK, they will all look and feel very similar. They will have the same style of table and the same style of chair. The staff, as we have mentioned, will be dressed in the same uniform, and even the menu will look exactly the same. These decisions are all controlled by Brett as the franchisor, and franchisees, such as Jimmy, will have to make sure that the standards of his shop in Coventry are up to scratch, or customers might be surprised that this particular store is somehow different from all of the others. So, we have looked closely at the parts of the franchise that Brett maintains control over, but let's now look at the parts of the business that will be Jimmy's responsibility as a franchisee. Jimmy will be responsible for the recruitment of all employees, along with all of the time and costs associated with this process. He will also be responsible for ensuring that each of these employees is correctly trained in the daily operations of the coffee shop. Finally, it will be Jimmy and his employees' responsibility to ensure that they always maintain the correct stock levels. For example, they must make sure they always have enough coffee and milk, or they will have some very unhappy customers on their hands, and this can negatively impact the brand image of MegaBeans. So, you can see that there is a large amount of responsibility for a franchisee like Jimmy. You might be asking yourself, if you have to do all of this, why not just launch your own coffee shop? Why would he even open a franchise in the first place? Well, imagine how convenient it would be to just have an instant business. Everything has been planned from the name all the way to the menu design and the prices. The ingredients have been chosen and the furniture design has already been made. Think about the countless hours that you have saved by not having to do all of this yourself. This is one of the key reasons that an entrepreneur may choose to start a franchise. As with almost everything in business, there are both advantages of setting up a franchise and disadvantages. Let's look at both and how they may impact Jimmy and his new MegaBeans branch. Because it is a franchise, the suppliers for a MegaBeans branch have already been chosen. Brett, the franchisor, has spent many years building relationships with these suppliers, and this means time and potentially money can be saved, as Jimmy does not need to worry about sourcing these supplies himself. Jimmy will receive support from Brett as the franchisor of MegaBeans when it comes to deciding where the shop should be located. As Brett has helped hundreds of franchisees make this decision before, he has a wealth of knowledge on exactly what will work. This should mean Jimmy is able to avoid making any mistakes and choosing the wrong location. As we have mentioned already, many aspects of operating a franchise have already been handled for Jimmy. Even national advertising for the MegaBeans branches is already in place, and it's paid for by the franchisor, Brett. The time saved by Jimmy not having to make all these decisions means he is able to focus his time and efforts on other aspects of setting up the business, including hiring the best employees for his team. MegaBeans are already established as a well-known brand across the UK, and this means that there are already many customers interested in purchasing a coffee in one of these stores. Think about it. If you like McDonald's, do you go to different locations when you go on a trip or when you go on holiday? These customers are also happy to pay the same prices charged in MegaBeans branches across the UK, and Jimmy does not have to lower his prices to gain customer interest. This is the price they already expect to pay. The final advantage we will consider is that franchises are considered by both banks and investors as less of a risk. If Jimmy visits the bank asking for a loan to open a MegaBeans, he is likely to have more success than if he was hoping to open his own brand of coffee shop. Now, if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it, right? There are a number of disadvantages faced by Jimmy in choosing to open a franchise. Firstly, as I have already mentioned, Jimmy has to initially pay Brett the franchisor £12,000 to even be able to open a MegaBeans store. Jimmy could have used this £12,000 to invest in other areas of his business had he set up his own coffee shop. For example, this £12,000 could have been spent on launching his own marketing campaign to increase customer awareness for his own store and take on larger players just like MegaBeans. Jimmy will also have to pay the franchisor 10% of all the money taken in the store. Remember, this is not the profit made by the business, but it's the revenue. So he pays 10% of the money handed over by customers, but this doesn't take into account the costs of running the shop. As a franchisee, Jimmy has less freedom to decide how the business operates. As an example, let's say that Jimmy wants to run his own buy 2 drinks, get a 3rd drink free discount. He is not able to do so without permission from the franchisor, and instead is expected to operate exactly the same as all other MegaBeans branches. The final disadvantage that we will consider is that as part of a franchise, Jimmy's business can be significantly impacted by poor decisions and accidents which take place in other MegaBeans branches. For example, in the event that a customer experienced terrible customer service from an extremely rude employee in another MegaBeans branch, and this was recorded and had gone viral online, the negative publicity caused could damage the brand, meaning customers may stop coming to Jimmy's branch, even though this event had nothing to do with him or any of his staff. Hopefully you now have a pretty good understanding of why somebody like Jimmy would buy the rights to open a franchise. But what about a franchisor like Brett? Why would he be willing to take the risks of letting others run businesses under his brand? Each of the video courses over at BizzWizard.co.uk also includes an interactive business case study that applies the knowledge learnt to a real-world scenario. There are over 1,000 multiple-choice questions, each with detailed feedback, which tests students' understanding of the content. Why not visit BizzWizard.co.uk to find out more? The first advantage to selling your business as a franchise is faster growth. By franchising your business, you are able to open many more locations than you could on your own. Allowing other budding entrepreneurs to operate businesses under your brand significantly reduces the costs of this kind of national expansion. For example, franchisees like Jimmy have to pay all recruitment and training costs when employing new staff. These costs are not paid by Brett as the franchisor. There are also other savings such as utility costs like water and electricity and even insurance. By choosing to franchise your successful business, you increase the chance of having national and even international success. Had Brett not franchised the MegaBeans brand, it would not necessarily have gone on to be as recognised by consumers. If Brett had to launch all these branches himself, to manage them and oversee hundreds of employees, there is a chance the business would not have been so successful, or at least it might have taken him much longer. As each franchisee, like Jimmy, is making a capital investment, they are paying that initial fee. This investment can then be used to fund the expansion of the franchise itself, to be able to improve advertising or undergo product development. By having a cash injection every time a new store opens, this means the franchise can accomplish more. Now, although Brett has operated a successful franchise for many years, there are also some disadvantages to franchising your business. Firstly, you have to share the profits. Imagine Brett was successful in opening a MegaBeans in every town and city across the UK, without franchising the brand. Imagine he did it all alone. He hustled and got good managers in and somehow managed to run hundreds of branches himself. He would get to keep all of the profits for his business, every single penny. Next up, as a franchisor, you have less control of your business. If Jimmy over in Coventry did not do a good job at running the new MegaBeans branch and instead provided a poor service and more importantly served a poor cup of coffee, this could negatively impact the entire brand image. It could be difficult for Brett to control what every employee in every store across the UK actually does. The final disadvantage we will consider is that it can be slow to implement change. Imagine if Brett wants every store to use an entirely new, top-of-the-range coffee maker. This training needs to be delivered to employees in every store, and this can often take a great deal of time. This can sometimes make it difficult for businesses to respond dynamically to change. You can see that it's not all smooth sailing when it comes to franchising your business. And if you find yourself with a successful business on your hands, you will need to weigh the pros against the cons before deciding on the next best move. Now, before we wrap this video up, let's take a quick look at a couple of things you need to remember. Always make sure you are very careful not to confuse a franchisee like Jimmy and a franchisor like Brett. It's also tempting to think when opening an already successful franchise that there can be no risk of the business failing, as it is already a recognised brand. Remember though, there are always risks in business, and you may open your franchise in the wrong place, at the wrong time. There are never any guarantees. Finally, always consider if becoming a franchisee or a franchisor is actually suitable to the individual in the case study that you are being given. Remember to think back to the advantages and disadvantages discussed in this video when you are making any recommendations. This has been the BizzWizard. See you